am going to go ahead and get us started today. So first of all, I would like to welcome you to the Muirwood Center Zoom today. A little history: Muirwood Center is located on the first floor of the Covenant Place 2 Con family building on the Millstone campus, across from the Jewish Federation in St. Louis. It was created as a venue for seniors and senior programming and includes a range of senior service providers, including Washington University School of Medicine, geriatric primary care. From that time that it opened in September of 2019, the center has provided a range of programs and activities for seniors, which attracted a growing number of participants. In light of the COVID pandemic, in-person programming at the center was suspended in early 2020, and programming has shifted to Zoom, which is proving to be, someone's sharing their screen, I'm sorry, um, increasingly popular with our target population. So I'm going to introduce June McAllister Fowler, a Senior Vice President of Communications, Marketing, and Public Affairs. June leads internal, external, and public policy communications and government community relation efforts on behalf of BJC Healthcare. Prior to joining BJC, June was Senior Director of Communications and Community Affairs for Mallinckrodt. She began her career as an urban planner with St. Louis County government, ultimately serving as Director of Department of Planning. Please welcome June Fowler. Thank you, June.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for having me. Because we are in a technological world, I'm going to ask Judy. Judy, can you see me?
I can.
Okay, so my camera is still on. Wonderful, wonderful. So again, I want to say thank you, and we're going to get right into a short presentation, and then I look forward to having a conversation with you. So I want to take you back. It was the summer of 1967 in St. Louis, a simpler time, a much simpler time that made it quite customary for two sisters, ages 14 and 11, and Judy, if you will advance to the next slide, please, who had begged their parents to let them walk to the center where they took swimming lessons 3 times a week. Even though it was a mile and a half from their home near Forest Park to Yalem Center, their parents said yes, as long as the girls promised to walk through the neighborhoods rather than along the main streets. The sisters happily agreed and enjoyed the feeling of independence as they walked and talked and laughed and made plans for spending the quarter that they each had after the lesson. And then everything changed. As they walked along a side street that bordered one of the West End private places, continuing to laugh, all of a sudden, Judy, next slide, a German Shepherd appeared. Next slide, Judy. Nope, missing one. There we go. All of a sudden, a German Shepherd appeared. I'm still on Yalem.
The next one is...
Should be a picture of a German Shepherd.
Okay, there's the German Shepherd. Okay.
Yes, everybody bear with us. This is technology. Again, I'm going to go back. As they walked along the side street that was bordered by one of the West End private places, they continued to laugh. And then all of a sudden, a German Shepherd appeared and charged the 11-year-old. Her sister tried to help, but was also understandably terrified. As the dog continued its attack, after what seemed like an eternity, 2 women came out of the house. One, an employee, running and calling the dog. The other, moving much more slowly and staying silent. The woman who ran was finally able to get control of the dog as the 11-year-old lay sobbing on the sidewalk. Once controlled, the dog and the two women silently went into the house. The sisters, shaken to their core, abandoned their swimming and shopping plans and returned home. When their parents saw their two sobbing daughters and heard them barely able to utter the words dog, attack, two ladies, they immediately called the police and headed back to the scene of the event. Once the police arrived, the group went to the front door and knocked. The woman, the resident of the home, who had remained silent as her dog attacked a child, opened the door and looked very confused as to why there were four Black people and a white police officer standing on her porch. From the viewpoint of the 11-year-old, everything that happened after that would become an indicator of the power and value of being white and the dismissal of the experiences of being Black. Within the year, next slide, please, Judy, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King would be assassinated. For the 11-year-old, every image she would see of the coverage would take her back to the previous summer. The dogs attacking peaceful protesters, police officers attacking protesters, hoses turned on peaceful protesters. Some white people protesting with Black people, but others standing by and looking on those people with hatred and dismissal. And in full transparency, that 11-year-old was me. If you are over a certain age, you know exactly where you were and what you were doing on April 4th, 1968, when you heard the news of Dr. King's death. For many, it felt personal. The retrospectives of his famous speech in Washington, D.C., seeing him march arm in arm with protesters in the South. Photos of him as a family man with Coretta and their beloved children. Him as a pastor of Ebenezer Church, that church thrust again into the spotlight as Pastor Ralph Warnock and John Ossoff were elected to the Senate from Georgia just a few weeks ago. And we also saw the sacrifices that became clear Dr. King and his family made. Next slide, please. When we saw pictures of him behind bars. Dr. King sparked a movement, appealing to those who were quite literally sick and tired of being oppressed, disrespected, and yes, dismissed. As I got older and thought back to standing on that porch, I recognize that as difficult as it is for a child to feel unheard, the experience for my parents to know that neither the white owner of the house, the white police officer, or what I would later learn was the Black housekeeper, found my parents or their children worthy of holding a dog accountable for the attack. For my parents, this became an inflection point that would move them from reacting to a moment to supporting a movement. Now, while my parents did not physically join in most of the marches or protests, they did become active in the movement by volunteering and using the resources they had, including our home and their businesses, to help support the movement. It brought clarity to the very profound words by Dr. King that foretold of the personal transformation that must occur in order to go from accepting what is to working to make what is unacceptable. Next slide, Judy. You know, there are many quotes, many words spoken by Dr. King that encourage me, but this is one of the most profound. This quote tells us that we literally begin to die the day we become complacent about wrong. When we choose to turn our heads, stay in our comfortable lanes, or think that someone else will do it. For a number of years after Dr. King's death and the protests that were sparked by his death, we started to live content in our complacency because for many, life on the surface was good. There were moments of the movement being rekindled: the beating of Rodney King, the death of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, and others led to protests that showed it was possible that the spark was still there. Unfortunately, there always seemed to be a way to cast doubt on exactly why each of these young men had met their fates. It became the word of those in authority against those who were often dismissed. And once again, memories of being 11 years old flooded back. And then through technology, everything changes. Next slide, Judy. We see George Floyd literally have the life choked out of him, a modern day lynching that was broadcast around the world. Sure, there would be due process for those in authority, but nothing could or should undo the image of the slow imposition of death over 8 minutes of a human being who is viewed as less than by those in positions of power, the ultimate dismissal. George Floyd's death was the flame that ignited a reborn movement that continues to this day. People across the world making a personal decision that this cannot be who we are or what we accept, that Dr. King's prophetic words will be our legacy if we stay silent. This is a reborn movement, and it shows up in different ways. It shows up, next slide, Judy. In,
Sorry, let's just get that muted.
it shows up in peaceful protest of people from many walks of life making a personal decision to walk and march and chant and pray and work together for change. Peaceful protesters no longer have to find out where the protests will be as they did when my parents helped with organizing from our living room. Social media and technology are the new tools of communicating where to gather. The movement also shows up in explosive ways. Next slide, Judy. Where protesters are met with force from law enforcement, yet persist in keeping their voices heard. Dismissal will no longer be tolerated. And the movement shows up in meeting the needs of people as nonprofits organize career fairs, food drives, book giveaways, and many other social service activities and initiatives. The movement shows up in CEOs' offices as letters are shared with employees saying, no more passiveness. Diversity, equity, and inclusion will no longer be just words, but actions, evident in our hiring, our spending, and our culture that will not tolerate bigotry. And the movement shows up at the ballot box. The movement must show up for each of us individually. Next slide, Judy. As we contemplate the long road ahead and what we personally can do to create a path that makes it clear that we will not allow anyone to be dismissed. A path that acknowledges our responsibility and power to make a positive difference individually and with our villages. A path that walks guided by the light that is inside all of us. A path that chooses love because hate is too great a burden to bear. And yes, I am paraphrasing Dr. King again. A path that will lead us also to remember Breonna Taylor, Laquan McDonald, Botham Jean, Casey Goodson Jr., Damian Daniels, Sandra Bland, and George Floyd. A path that says the days of dismissing the experiences of people of color, of Black people in this country, will and must be behind us. A path that says we will not sit idly by and say to an 11-year-old skinny black girl, yes, I am paraphrasing the amazing inaugural poet Amanda Gorman, but we will not sit by and say to a skinny 11-year-old black girl, your pain does not matter. I want to encourage each of you to do what I know many of you have already done, which is to make a commitment to your own personal movement. I'll confess that I am not a marcher anymore, but I've written in my journal how I will ignite my personal movement and 4 changes I am going to work to make happen in the near and more distant future. And I'll let you in on a secret. One of those has to do with getting guns off the streets of St. Louis so that we can be a different community. As I end this talk, I want to share another secret. My absolute favorite number is 8. I don't know why, it just always has been, but in 8 years, Mr. George Floyd would have turned 56 years old. And from where I will be sitting in 8 years, that would make him a really young man. Actually, where I sit right now, that makes him a young man. Next slide, Judy. 8 years from now, in 2029, we will also celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's 100th birthday. Seems hard to believe since we have seen him frozen in time as forever 39. For his 100th birthday, we have the ability to make a lot of positive progress over the next 8 years if, and it's a big if we choose to do so. I want to encourage us. Let's make that choice. I can think of no better gift to the movement started by Dr. King than having all of us do just that. So in 2029, let's be able to look back on the next 8 years and list the things we have been able to accomplish individually and collectively that respect this reborn movement. Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to share this time with you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks, Judy.
Oh, you're welcome. I will stop sharing the screen. And if anyone has any questions, we can chat. We can raise our hand. Um, Lee Bramf, you need to unmute. Lee, do you have a question? You can unmute yourself.
I don't
Lee?
have a question. I was
Oh,
just trying to hear.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you had your hand up. Thank you so much. There is a question in the chat here. Let me see. Oh, there was someone couldn't hear. So, um, Steve Radinsky.
Hello.
Oh, Harvey, do you have a question?
No, I just have a something perhaps for us to ponder. It might be worthwhile thinking, what can I do to help to make certain that all lives matter, Black lives particularly matter, uh, and to enhance the opportunities for what should be in our great country, racial equality. That we each need to think about, what tasks can we accomplish? Can we do? Can we push and involve ourselves in to achieve these necessary goals?
Thank you, Harvey. Steve, do you have
Yeah, June, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I wanted to thank you very much. I don't know if you remember me or not, but you were very helpful when I was working with the American Cancer Society. And
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, and you
Well,
were
that's
always
great.
so generous with all of our programs that you were able to help us with. And I've never been able to see you in person, but I always talked with you on the telephone. And we had many long conversations. And I also want to thank Flint. I don't know, most people don't know who Flint is, but Flint is June's husband and was head of the Boys and Girls Club. And he was very instrumental with working with my daughter, Marla Felton, on Common Circles.
Yeah, yeah, I will. Well, we're working from home, so he's about 3 floors down. So I will give him your regards.
Oh, so tell Flint, I'm very grateful for all the work that he was doing, helping my daughter with her nonprofit Common Circles in order to have empathy and understanding for
Mhm.
all people so
Yep,
that
yep.
everybody can get along and, and enjoy this world together without fighting. And,
For me,
and,
no,
and
go ahead,
if you
Steve.
need any help with the no guns, I'm here for you. Just give me a call, and I'd be happy to help you in any way with your to get rid of guns. That's one of my. I've never known how to do that, but I would be happy to work with you.
And I will profess, I don't know how to do it either. And I don't dislike guns. I want illegal guns off the streets. I want people to have to register. I want us to have common sense ways of thinking about firearms. When the criminal element is has better guns than our police officers, we are in trouble. So we've just got to have common sense for these things. This is it's so great to see you, because in my talk I said doing things individually and with your village. And one of the things we have the opportunity to do, and I'll say this to Harvey, is we have the opportunity to expand our villages, and to think about people who share the same commitment we do to the things we're talking about today, and figuring out how we work together to, again, collectively and then individually, because we can, if your village is the palm of your hand, you've got all of these fingers that will help to extend it. See, there are people that are committed to this that I don't know, but we can bring them together and go collectively. So
I agree, and I hope we can work together on projects in the future.
absolutely. Thank you.
So do we have more questions, comments? I think that was just June. Thank you so, so very much. It was wonderful. I don't see any more comments or questions.
Okay, but
Oh,
Actually, I see coming.
somebody, oh,
call
there's,
from King Bud. Call from King Bud.
so,
Judy,
yes, there is a
so
Susan Kempinen. What is one way you think we can connect with people who have differing views about race?
I think one of the things we can do, and as Judy told you guys, I am in communications, is we can think about language. We can think about how we approach people, and start to use language that's less inflammatory. So I think we have to be really careful with words, because if we start out in our corners, accusing this side of being fill in the blank, and you accuse this side of being something else. There's a consultant who talks about trying to decrease distance between each other to get to common ground and find those things that matter to all of us. I don't have any yet, but start talking about your grandchildren. Start talking about some of your hobbies. Be it gardening, be it walking. Finding those things that are common between you, and then going from there. It's hard to have a difficult. Some people call them courageous, but it's hard to start out having a difficult conversation with somebody you don't know. If you don't know anything about them, what's happening is this, because we start out with what feels like accusations. So I think, connecting with people on those things that you have in common, and then building that trust, will allow you to start to have conversations about the areas where you may have difference. I there are about 300 people who report to me in at BJC, and after Michael, it wasn't Michael Brown, it may have been after uh, George. No, it was during the election. See, I'm older, so I can't remember things, but I reminded people that no matter which side of the political spectrum you are on, it is possible and quite likely that there are family members, friends, colleagues, co-workers who are on another side, and that our goal has to be keeping relationship. So if we can keep relationship, we can figure out how to have some of those difficult conversations, establish the relationship, keep relationship, try to understand that we are all shaped by our experiences, but we can't stay there. So I could not stay that 11-year-old angry girl. I wasn't even angry, I was hurt. That 11-year-old, very hurt girl who looked at a white woman, a Black woman, and a white police officer and did not feel loved. And I couldn't take that and then spread it to everybody who might share those demographics. Because in the end, that pain, that hate is too great a burden to bear. So Susan, I hope that helps to answer the question.
June, good morning. This is Louis Levy.
It's Louis Levy. Hi, Louis.
Good morning. Thank you again for your poignant, thought-provoking, and inspirational remarks. Really appreciate what you do in the community, and continue keep the fight. And a lot of us will try to help. But thank you.
Thank you, Louis. It's great. I've known Louis for over 30 years, so it's great to see you. Great to see you.
Cheryl?
Like home week for me.
Hi, June. Jan Barron here.
Jan.
Hi. You and I have tried to work together several times through the various organizations that I was with, and I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to tell you that I just joined the board of cultural leadership, and
Wonderful.
and I think it's a wonderful way of having young people get together and learn about each other and learn tolerance and learn each other's cultures. So I'm very excited about that, and I know this will help in the community as well.
Absolutely. So, Jan, it's the thing I was saying about, cultural leadership is one of those organizations that seeks to close the distance. Even among kids who may seem to have lots of external or socioeconomic things in common, there can still be distance. So again, learning to appreciate each other's cultures and what makes us all unique. Cultural leadership does a great job at that. So congratulations on joining the board, and it's great to see you.
Thanks, June. Good to see you too. Keep up the good work.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Thank you.
And Cheryl Addleston, who is the director at JCRC, she put something in the chat, but she may want to elaborate on that. Cheryl, if you want to.
Sure, thank you. Hi, June. It's nice to see
Yeah,
you.
nice to see you too.
Yes, June and I go way back.
I've seen you.
So I am now, we haven't seen each other in a while. I'm the deputy director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, and we have an organization called the Jewish Coalition for Racial Equity. It's about 50 members strong, and we have a whole action plan that we're rolling out, and a lot of it is around education. Several of our JCRE members are on this call, Jan and Harvey and others. And I just wanted to let everyone know that that's another way that you can learn about these issues. In order to be an ally, in order to stand up and speak out, you have to be educated. Along with a lot of other interfaith partners, we are hosting an education series starting next month called The Great Divide: Race in Our Region. And we're going to be really talking about systemic racism and digging down into 4 important areas: economic inequities, access to healthcare, environmental racism, and the courts. So we just encourage, and this is in partnership with the Mirowitz Center. I know that everyone's been doing advertising for it, but we just want people to know about it. It's a way to continue the learning that June has started for us today. if this is a new area for you, and we try to do these things so that we can be allies, so that we understand what's going on, so that we can speak up about it. Because like you said, most people just don't know and don't understand, and they haven't walked in those shoes. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to pitch our series, and your remarks were inspiring, June. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Great to see you.
So thank you, everyone. Does anyone have anything else? Any questions or comments they would like to share?
Well, perhaps superfluous in this group of people who have selected to join with all of us who feel this is so important. But just the idea of being nice to everyone. When people help us to our cars, or when they're saying thank you and gee, we hope you and your family stay healthy, and we're very appreciative of the assistant, etc. But try to be vocal, because we not only speak to the person to whom we're addressing our words, but we also speak to ourselves. And it reminds us, it seems to me, of the humanity, of the niceness, of the commandment to honor others and to be nice to them. And just the simple practice may help us push this agenda that is so urgently needed in this country forward. Of we're all created by the same God, or if those of us who don't believe in God, we're all equal. And just doing nice things to others, and particularly people of color, but may be very important to help ourselves become more motivated to this great, great need.
Great.
Thank
That's
you,
a
Harvey.
great reminder. A great reminder.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you very much. Anyone else today? Well, June, thank you so very much. We really, really appreciate your presentation and your insights. It was just a beautiful message. And I just want to thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it. And remember, Martin Luther King would have been 100 years old in 2029. So that would be a great milestone for us to shoot for some real sustainable and nice change for our nation. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye bye now. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
June. Bye.
Sorry that